Longevity Lifestyle Designers. This is Zach here at secretsoflongevity.com as well as martin-kilgour.com. And I was just on YouTube doing some searches on, well, the title of this video. So, why do women live longer than men? And this is generally an average in North America and most other parts of the world, actually. And I was shocked by the content of most of the videos. They were filled with images depicting people's impressions of why men don't live as long as women, and they were comical. I get the point they were trying to make. However, this is exactly a reason, not the reason in the pictures, but people's perception of making jokes in this way is actually a contributing factor to why men don't live as long as women on average. And in many of these videos, you see images of men gawking at women and getting hit by a bus, or, you know, they're too distracted, easily distracted by something, and they do something stupid and get killed for it. And this is what the images are implying. And I'm going to talk about 3 possible theories as to why there's a difference in the age gap between men and women in terms of their maximum lifespan. And number 1, which is what I'm relating this to, is the difference that men get depicted as in society. And this goes for most societies around the world, and the roles that they have to take up. Perhaps one of the biggest myths going is that there is still inequality for women to men. However, there is actually a reversal of roles at this point in terms of equality, and it is very apparent that men actually have more inequality than women nowadays, all over North America. Now, I'm not going to say that this has always been the case. There have been factors that have switched. If you think of a pendulum, and in the middle is equality, and one side you're having sort of men getting power, like you hear a lot of people talking about, and on the other end of this pendulum is women having all the power, and it exists for a variety of issues. And yes, there are definitely still issues where women don't have the power. There are issues where there is equality, but there is an increasing number of issues where men are unfairly targeted and being given a bad rap. And one of the best examples of this is in the media, and how men are the butt end of jokes, whereas if you take a black, a Jew, or a woman and put them in the context of that joke, it becomes racist, sexist, and unacceptable to anyone watching it that has any sort of values that make sense. But of course, we easily laugh at men, just like I was seeing in these videos, because at a deep level we don't have that much respect for them, because we know, or we hear, that there's all these bad things about them. Men are rapists, men are bad parents, men are violent, men can't control their sexuality, men can't do this, men can't do that. And you know what? I'm personally sick of it, and I can definitely see a correlation between the amount of stress that men take on throughout societies all over the world and their lower lifespans. Since the 1920s, according to Dr. Farrell, the age gap, which was around 2 to 3 years in 1920, has increased to 7 to 10 years on average between men and women. I mean, I'm not going to go into all the details of this because men's rights activism is a very broad topic, and I encourage you to watch an interview with Dr. Farrell, which I've posted below. It's another video, and it's a 19-part interview series, and it's long, I know, but it is well worth your time. This guy is very knowledgeable. He was once a feminist, a very prominent and well-known feminist, and he actually got to a point where he couldn't deny the facts that there are many areas that weren't adding up and didn't have the right arguments in terms of women being so disempowered when in fact they weren't. So this includes everything from the wage gap to domestic violence, which I'm not going to get into, but it's very interesting if you're not aware of these facts. So traditionally, men have taken on more dangerous jobs, which obviously leads to more mortality. They have higher suicide rates, but I personally, from what I've learned, that's related to our society's depiction of men. So they obviously, on average, are going to have lower self-esteem in men than women. and that's going to result in higher suicide rates. 80% of suicides are from men. So that's obviously going to contribute to the gap in lifespans between men and women. I get very disappointed in our society when I see things like this in the media, and I'm going to show you this clip. This was once a musical hero of mine. I used to be a drummer. I still drum. I no longer have a drum kit, but I used to play to this guy's music. I loved his music. I loved the drummers he had on his music. And at a certain point I realized that I didn't really resonate with the message in his music and his lyrics, because his message is actually misandry, which is the hate towards men. Whether it's conscious or unconscious. But in this clip...
I've always been fascinated by women. They're such
Why?
amazing... Well, I think they're superior creatures in every sense. I really do. No, I'm not just saying that. No, I mean that. I think women are superior. Mentally, psychologically, certainly physically.
You can clearly see that he's not... he doesn't have the balls to actually embrace his own gender. And quite frankly, the only reason he can get a partner in life is because of his status. And that's quite unfortunate, because he's not being taught through his lack of ability to get a partner in life that his view of himself isn't working. But for most men, that's the problem they have, is that they've been brought up to have this poor view of themselves, and so they get trampled on because they see themselves in this way. And so you can see, this way of thinking is very prevalent in our society. This is just one clip. But because that's there is a correlation to the stresses in men's lives. They're more disposable, so to speak, so they're taking on higher stress jobs, working much longer hours than they should be. And correspondingly, they're getting the heart disease, they're getting the cancer rates, they're getting all the diseases of metabolism from the stress in their lives. And one interesting thing I like to point out is that there's a place called Sardinia off the coast of Italy. It's an island, and it has some of the highest rates of longevity in the world. But it's very peculiar because the men and women live the same length of lifespans on average. So there's no lifespan gap between the genders. And National Geographic examined their lifestyles, and they found that the men were generally, farming, they were shepherds, they were out walking a lot. They had a lot of healthy lifestyle factors, but the women did too. But it was the way they divided up the chores of life that made an impact on the men. And also they weren't surrounded by the media, so they're not getting these bad images of their own gender shoved in their face and down their throats. So what they found was the women were actually taking on a little bit of the men's work in terms of what's traditionally thought of as men's work, keeping track of finances in the home. Because the men were shepherds in a lot of these situations, they were off for several days at a time taking the sheep or goats or whatever they had around the valley or around the mountainside, and the women would have to take care of a little bit more housework than they were used to taking care of in other types of traditional societies. So I have to wonder why there is this gap in our culture that's so great.